Once again, Hamas has walked out of peace talks with Israel and then launched massive rocket attacks against major Israeli cities. Our John Wagi has that story from Jerusalem.
Israeli airstrikes boomed in the Gaza darkness, a response to at least 50 rockets Hamas fired into Israel, some of them directed at Israel's major population centers. Israel struck at least 30 targets in Gaza. One of them was the home of Hamas military leader Mohammed Deif, whose wife and child were reported killed. Hamas quit the ceasefire talks in Egypt, and one spokesman said hell will be unleashed on Israel. Jerusalem returned to a kind of cautionary normal after sirens sounded Tuesday, both here and in Tel Aviv. But polls show Israelis are in no mood for a diplomatic tap dance with Hamas. The latest Peace Index poll, taken before Hamas broke the most recent ceasefire, shows 58% of Israeli Jews want to defeat Hamas through military action, and a near unanimous 97% believe Israel's military is doing a good or excellent job. Israelis we talked to seemed resigned to the idea that the fight must continue, despite the heavy stress of rocket attacks.
I never thought in my life, at, 11 something or 12 o'clock last night, just sitting on my bed, I would hear that sound. And you're hearing it now, and everyone is a part of it.
We try to do our best to get the situation to be good, and they don't want to do it.
Maybe something will change. Maybe the world eyes will be open, and they will see it's not normal to live like that. The evil, it's not us.
Hamas claims Israel's airstrikes were designed to thwart the Cairo talks.
We're warning the Israeli occupation from continuing this escalation and violating the ceasefire. We put the responsibility on Israel for this escalation and the implications of it.
Indirect talks between Israel and Hamas failed in part because Hamas wanted Israel to restore Palestinian access to Gaza by land, sea, and air, without giving up its huge store of weapons.
A seaport or an air port without commitment for demilitarization is like a duty-free for rocket and missiles.
As the fighting resumes, Israel is pursuing leads in its major bust of a Hamas plot in the West Bank. The security agency Shin Bet found a collection of terror cells headed by a ringleader in Turkey. They were getting ready to launch a coup against the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah and hit a number of Israeli targets, including the Temple Mount. John Wagi, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, John. I've been thinking, ladies and gentlemen, what is Hamas' game plan? I mean, they don't have but so much weaponry. They've only got so many rockets. And yet they're firing these rockets willy-nilly at cities in Israel, and they're trying to provoke Israel, and Israel comes in and then destroys Gaza. So what are they being advantaged? Well, here's my thought on it. If you read the book of the prophet Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, he talks about a coalition coming against Israel in the latter days. That coalition, it consists of Russia, consists of Turkey, consists of Iran, and consists of Sudan. These are some. There may be some others in there too, but they are the major players. And there's going to be a vast army coming against Israel in a pincer movement. Now, could this be the trigger of that? Could something be moving Hamas toward that? They're trying to incite Hezbollah and Lebanon to come in. They're trying to incite the Syrians to come in. And they're obviously trying to incite the Iranians to come in. They obviously want a broader war, and they want to take down Israel. But could this be the precursor to the prophecy that you find in Ezekiel? And my answer is yes, I think it could be. This is the next big prophetic thing on the horizon, and it's very possible. It's setting up for that. Because Israel, we all acknowledge, has a right to defend itself, but sooner or later the nations are going to say, oh, but you're too extreme. It's not proportionate. You're not proportionate to the fact that they're sending some rockets and you're blowing up their buildings. It'll come down to that, and the press will spin it against Israel as sure as you're alive. Watch what happens. But right now, Egypt is on the side of Israel, And it's time that the United States State Department recognize we've got a friend in Sisi in Egypt, and we ought to support him. We've got a friend in the Peshmerga up in northern Iraq, and we ought to support them. And we've got a great friend in Israel, and we need to support them. And we should not support the Muslim Brotherhood. We should not support Hamas, and we should not support terrorists. And if we wake up to who the friends are and who the enemies are, the United States may be on the right side. But on this one, I think they're going to just hands off. We'll lead from behind. We won't get involved. And that's what the Bible says will happen.